Hey yo, what is up everybody? It's your boy Dice, aka Dice'em, and I am back at it again with another banger of a video. Let's get it, let's go. You already know what time it is, you already know what's up, so peep it, check it. Female M.U.T.O from G14 versus the adult Sullcrawler, the alpha. Without further ado, let's go. So yeah, the Sullcrawlers are actually megafauna. They are technically not considered titans, though they are titan-like, and they are very powerful and even more aggressive than the M.U.T.Os. They are hypervores, beings that keep eating and eating and eating until they regurgitate, puke, and purge, and then they keep eating. They just don't stop, and they're never satisfied. They are crazed with hunger. Crazy, insane in the brain, and they are just absolutely hostile and utterly monstrous. These beings actually killed Kong's entire species. They killed pretty much the entire species and all of the tribe of Kongs from Skull Island that Kong was a part of, and they even wiped out Kong's parents right in front of him as a baby. And the thing about them is that they are still around. They are these creatures that are not extinct. They are still, in fact, around on the Earth and in the Hollow Earth. And on Skull Island, they typically, as I mentioned, get around 196 feet long, maybe around 65 to like 90 some feet tall. And then you got the ones that actually grow to be adult alphas that actually grow to become over 250 feet long, sometimes reaching upwards of 300 feet. They do walk and run on two legs like a biped, but they have the posture of a quadruped downright on all fours. And the thing about them is they have this long tail that's very serpentine. It's very serpent-like, very snake-like, where it can use its tail to constrict and wrap around its prey. What's even more interesting is not only are they like a cross between different kinds of reptiles like lizards and snakes and dinosaurs, but they are also creatures that have these prehensile tongues that can do the same thing that their tails do, constrict around and wrap up and snatch up their prey items. Sullcrawlers are battle hardened, as the majority of them grew up on Skull Island having to battle for supremacy. These are creatures that are likely from the Hollow Earth, similar to war bats, that did not originate from Skull Island, but they did burrow to Skull Island, where they would actually become the invasive species apex predator there. The people of Skull Island, who I believe are called the Iwi, actually believe that Kong is the savior ape god of their island. They believe that Skull Island is protected by Kong because Kong is the last of his kind, a savior great ape titan who actually prevents the overtaking of the world by the Sullcrawlers, which if it were to happen would start with Skull Island. And even though a single Sullcrawler, even if it's around the same size as Godzilla, couldn't take on something like Godzilla, a group of them as an invasive species taking over the planet might be able to at least put up a fight against Godzilla and be a cause for concern. Kong is the one who's been battling these creatures and keeping them at bay, and he alone is the badass who is handling the problem. The last time we saw Kong fight a Sullcrawler was in Kong Skull Island when he was still a juvenile, but now he's over 300 feet tall and the Sullcrawlers are even longer. So I can't wait to see him actually fight another one to see what it would be like now. We know what Sullcrawlers are capable of. What about the female M.U.T.O? The female M.U.T.O is in fact 340 feet tall, roughly. And she weighs about roughly 27,000 metric tons. She is a literal organic tank. She has an exoskeleton-like outer armor or shell that actually prevents her from receiving much damage from missile strike attacks, air strikes, even Godzilla's atomic breath for a period of time, though prolonged exposure can break and pierce through her armor. Godzilla had to actually breathe his fiery nuclear flame atomic blast directly down her throat in order to affect her organs directly and kill her. This process, called the Kiss of Death, beheaded the M.U.T.O by singeing her head off her shoulders, completely beheading her. It's crazy. After she's decapitated, as you'll see, Godzilla simply tosses her head down and lets out a roar, a victory roar. Godzilla's roar and the M.U.T.O's roar and Godzilla's design and the M.U.T.O's design, as well as many other things, were absolutely amazing in this film, but that's beside the point. The point is, the M.U.T.O was a cool new Titan, an awesome new kaiju. It was a good addition to the series, and I feel like these M.U.T.Os are definitely badass. They are concrete, solid, steel, titanium, adamantium, vibranium, dog. Like, they are very, very powerful. Their armor can literally withstand Godzilla's standard atomic breath, which few other organic creatures actually can. But if he were not just grazed and was hit dead on with prolonged exposure, he would have been obliterated. He would have been sliced and burned through and completely mowed down, just like the M.U.T.O would have been with extreme prolonged exposure. But even a good amount of exposure to the atomic breath wasn't cracking her shell or exoskeletal structure. The M.U.T.Os can unleash an electromagnetic pulse from their body that disrupts electronics. They can also burrow underground and do many other things. They are radioactive nuclear creatures, titans that feed off of nuclear energy and radiation. The male M.U.T.O was 200 some feet and the female was 340 feet. And we see how the female was a monster. And then you have even other M.U.T.Os that are above that, like the Queen M.U.T.O and M.U.T.O Prime. But regardless, today we're focusing on the female M.U.T.O from G14 going up against the alpha adult Sullcrawler, similar to the one seen in GVK. Now you're about to see what I was talking about earlier when I mentioned Godzilla's atomic breath and how the M.U.T.O was able to withstand it effortlessly and how it was inevitably defeated. So without further ado, let's peep it. Let's check that out. So yeah, obviously Godzilla's atomic beam is superheated and extremely hot with a lot of force and power behind it. But regardless, all it really did was push the M.U.T.O back and temporarily stun and stall it. But of course, in the end, Godzilla, as you see of course, was able to execute the kiss of death, executing the female M.U.T.O effectively. So anyways, y'all, without further ado, let's get right into the fight. But first, here's a few pictures of some of my Godzilla figures, They are some of my most prized possessions. I am a huge Goji and Kong fan, so take a look and let's get into the fight. The Sullcrawler makes its way through the city as it has escaped from one of the bases, and now, as it runs rampant, it goes on a rampage, eating everything it comes across that is organic in nature as it makes its way all the way through the city, eating its way through as it eventually comes across another megafauna / titan-like beast, the female M.U.T.O. The M.U.T.O is merely trying to absorb some radioactive energy from a power plant whenever the Sullcrawler shows up ready for war, bloodthirsty. This adult alpha Sullcrawler is longer than the female M.U.T.O, but not quite as tall. It walks directly towards the female M.U.T.O as it picks up its pace, running directly towards her as it then leaps through the air, coming right at the female M.U.T.O as the M.U.T.O rears up on its hind legs. The Sullcrawler attempts to bite for the throat of the female M.U.T.O as she raises her appendage on the right side of her body, up above her head, rearing up and slamming down the appendage arm right over her head, right across over the head of the Sullcrawler as it slams down, hitting the Sullcrawler with the blunt force edge right in the skull as its head is knocked to the ground as its bottom jaw smacks right onto the earth's surface below. The Sullcrawler quickly turns around and whips the female M.U.T.O with its tail right across the face, causing the M.U.T.O's head to fly to the side as its entire body is thrown to the side as its body weight causes it to fly all the way to one side, almost completely toppling over. And as it goes to lunge again directly at the female M.U.T.O, the female M.U.T.O brings both of its appendages down and impales the Sullcrawler straight through its hide with each hand. She charges at the Sullcrawler, ramming her through a building. She manages to bite directly onto the throat of the female M.U.T.O as she then digs her claws into the female M.U.T.O and attempts to pull back and rip her head directly off her shoulders. And as her throat begins to be torn open, she then manages to stab it straight through its side with her long, sharp, dagger-like appendage. She breaks free and pulls away as the Sullcrawler goes to lunge for her head. She rams directly into the Sullcrawler's chest, sending it flying back straight through multiple skyscrapers. It wraps its long serpentine snake-like tail around the neck of the female M.U.T.O, pulling her to the ground, causing her to slam into the ground as her appendages sink deeper and deeper beneath the concrete. She goes to impale him straight through the skull with her appendage arm as the Sullcrawler bites down on the appendage, breaking it off. She then goes in for the killing blow, biting the Sullcrawler in the throat, forcing it backwards with the force of her pushing with all of her body weight, as she then takes her long appendage and it uses the sharp dagger-like end to the appendage tip to poke and pierce straight through the back of the neck of the Sullcrawler, piercing through its spine, killing it instantly. Winner, the female M.U.T.O. Anyway, it's been your boy Dice, aka Dice'em, and I'm officially signing off. Outie.